dictionary definition of music is the art of arranging sounds in time through the elements of melody, harmony, rhythm, and timbre. Low Pass Filter is a show about the nature of this thing we call music, how it functions in people's lives, how it's contextualized by society, and why we find certain music meaningful. This is Low Pass Filter. Hello and welcome to Low Pass Filter. This is the show where we talk about music and what it means in our lives. My name is Mateo Noche and I'm here with Bandon Wayne.
Howdy.
Bandon, it's been a while.
Yeah, man.
I've had people asking what the heck happened to you guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. Good to know.
Good things and some not so good things. But for you, you went off and got hitched.
I got hitched, man. Yeah. And that was wonderful. It's a very beautiful wedding. But that whole month was just nuts.
Nutty, yeah.
Yeah.
And then for my part, as I caught the Rona,
the vid,
as they call it, you know. So that kind of threw our schedule off again. We were about ready to do another show, and then I got sick, so I was out of action for a while. Wasn't too terrible, but
it's good to know.
But now we're all whole. Yeah. You're married.
Yeah.
I'm well.
You've been married.
I've been married for a while. Yeah. Sorry, girls. But let's go ahead and just do this. Let's dive into it. You know, as we say, each month we go back and forth. We pick a topic. I pick a topic. Bandon picks a topic. And this month, it's Bandon's month to pick a topic.
Yeah, it was my month a couple months ago, and then we got waylaid a little bit.
It's still your month. You're still having a month.
It's still my month. So why did I pick this topic?
What is the topic? Maybe we should talk about what that is.
The topic is angry music.
Okay.
Or music that expresses a sense of anger. I wasn't feeling angry at the time I selected the topic. It just seemed like a territory maybe worth talking about. Kind of a, fundamental aspect of some of the music that we enjoy.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, music has lots of different moods and feelings.
Yeah,
you know, there's
emotional.
Happiness and sadness and anger, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as usual, I'm going to take a shot at defining terms here. We'll see if this really makes any sense. So musical genres that are commonly connected with rage are metal and punk rock music, but I don't think that's an exclusive thing.
Don't think so.
Punk stems from a generation of angry kids, it says here, with who are angry with the status quo. They added minor keys and power chords to pop songs, aggressive vocals, and stripped-down production. And I guess the question is, does music make us angry? Does angry music make us angry?
Well, I think when it comes to heavy metal, some people have argued, you know, that it causes a sense of angst, anger, acting out on those feelings. Other people might argue that it could quell some of those feelings or sort of ground someone and with something that they identify with, but it's a positive outlet, maybe.
Sure, and then there's always catharsis.
Yeah.
You know, there's always that.
That's a good word.
It's therapeutic and consoling. It allows you to release your anger and tension into the song.
Yeah.
There could be like really pleasant sounding songs that are angry, at least in lyrically, you know, and in topic, and intention, you know. But you know, there are also songs and genres of music that just sound like they're pissed off, you know, all the time, you know.
Screaming, banging stuff.
Dissonance, you know, certain sorts of scales and forte dynamics, they call it, you know. Just a steady stream of, you know, Cookie Monster vocals, you know, that sort of thing. And then I think you probably know right off that we're talking about angry songs.
Yeah. Well, and for me, as a preteen, teenager, I was very mild-mannered. Didn't have much to be really angry about, but yet I was drawn to songs or music that expressed that kind of energy. Not exactly sure why, it just spoke to me. And in the right moods, it still does.
Yeah, I sort of the opposite. I really, in fact, I was, I still listen to cassettes in the car, and I was listening to a cassette of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Deja Vu, which was like one of the very first records I ever owned. Although that has got an angry tune or two on it, but mostly it's rock and roll choir boys, just kind of doing harmonies and singing about wooden ships and stuff.
Yeah, that's a beautiful record.
But as I got older, and I really got a better sense of what was really going on in the world, then songs that expressed anger started to kind of creep into what I was listening to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never really felt the need to punch a wall or get in a fist fight or burn something down, but I listen to a lot of music that can express not necessarily the intention to do that, but feelings that arise sometimes that cause that kind of frustration.
Yeah, and there's a certain amount of calling out too in angry songs, calling out social wrongs and situations that just generational conflict and things that the song wants to call attention to.
And then in the mid to late '60s, didn't per se have heavy metal music. Rock and roll was starting to get a little heavier and stuff, but there was a lot of protest, there was a lot of anger at the system, the status quo, anger at war, innocent people being killed, civilians being shipped off to fight.
Students killed on campuses. I think of 4 Dead in Ohio. Speaking of the rock and roll choir boys, they managed to pull up some angry music.
Yeah, and that's a good example. That Neil Young song,
Buffalo Springfield, I think was
that Buffalo Springfield? Yeah. Not overtly aggressive sounding, but was expressing something to be upset about.
Yeah.
I think anger in music can take on many forms, and that was kind of what was interesting to me about it. But then there is also the aggressive side where we put it on sometimes because we need that cathartic energy and sound. So
yeah. Well, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't just dive into the list. Why don't you start us off and tell us what you've got?
Well, a first group that came to mind, a punk band called Minor Threat.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of in their name.
Yeah.
Of that era, the early 80s, the American hardcore punk movement, those guys were at the forefront, and every single one of their songs basically sounds like they're angry. Not, suggesting to go out and cause damage, but they were young kids with a bone to pick about the status quo and maybe even feeling like outsiders getting picked on, and just generally talking about things that piss themselves off. And so the first song I picked was called Seeing Red,
mm-hmm.
which is pretty obvious there, and then another one called I Don't Want to Hear It. And they're short blasts, really just fast, minute-and-a-half long songs of I'm seeing red. It's pretty easy to wrap your mind around the feelings they were expressing there. Then another song by Black Flag called My War.
Mm-hmm. Remember it, yeah.
My War, you're one of them.
So let me ask you this. So isn't punk just an angry genre?
Well,
And then people in punk that don't express anger, then they're called posers. And doesn't that happen if like Green Day, wrote about the best days of their lives, and then they were obviously not punk anymore.
Yeah, I didn't really think that was quote unquote punk, but it could have been. I mean, if it was coming from a place of rebelling against something.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is punk required to be angry at all times?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think there's a punk edge in musicality that doesn't necessarily have to be angry, but it usually is swimming upstream, kind of going against the grain. So, yeah, but the early idea of punk rock music was definitely rebellious. On the musical side, a lot of punk bands thought that conventional rock and roll had gotten too bloated and progressive and commercialized.
Yacht rock.
Yeah, so they were trying to bring it back to square one, but there was, say, in England a lot for those kids to be frustrated with. And
oh, yeah. And I guess you could, I could just to demolish my theory here, like the Ramones, they wrote songs like, Rockaway Beach, where they're talking about going to the beach and, and covered, California sun and surfing bird and stuff like that. So they had plenty of angry songs too, but they also, maybe even hit a major chord or two in some of their songs that they wrote.
Yeah, from where they were coming from, I think it was maybe anger or frustration at being the outsiders, the nerds that were kind of overlooked.
Yeah.
I think Joey Ramone, was singing about girls that he couldn't get and stuff along those lines. But their attitude, the energy, to most normies, as you might say, was, was aggressive. It was too intense to be enjoyed on conventional radio. And, so, there was some anger in there, but I think they tempered it with.
But I think later punk bands, like Black Flag is a good case in point. Always sounded angry. Everything they did was angry. Which is fine. I'm not putting down on that. I'm just saying that was kind of the thing. It kind of grew into punk as a genre. Just kind of grew into all anger all the time, or all aggressiveness, or all
maybe in that era there didn't feel like a lot of dimension.
Yeah,
it was kind of that one tone, and it lasted as long as it did.
Sure.
Henry Rollins is probably still a little bit angry about some stuff.
Yeah, he probably couldn't find a parking space
when he got here to perform.
Couldn't get his Bentley into the small spaces they have for compacts now.
Yeah, but he's also learned to channel his energy into other things besides.
He's awesome.
Yeah. Cool dude.
He probably doesn't drive a Bentley either. I'm sure. He's probably like a Tesla.
Yeah, that would make a lot more sense. Yeah. So I didn't stick too much in that early punk stuff, but then you get a later punk group like Bikini Kill.
Yes, and I see that we both had the same song, Double Dare.
Oh, nice. Yeah. What were they?
Well, I think this kind of that song just sort of stakes out the Riot Girl movement, which was a feminist female punk movement, and they state, in the song. Let's see, we're Bikini Kill and we want revolution, girl style now, is one of the lyrics from the song, and they're basically just sticking out their territory. That's like, we don't need anything off of you lot, and we're going to do our own thing. And really, I don't know if they started the Riot Girl movement, but they were definitely in the first wave and the forefront of that.
I would think considered pretty responsible for that as a musical movement or even a political movement. There were some other groups at the same time, but it was kind of a new era at that point. for one, where are women in the punk underground?
Totally.
They're very self-aware of that situation. Rock and roll being dominated by men was something people were aware of to an extent, but at that point, especially in the punk underground, it was like there's absolutely no reason that this should be completely male dominated, that we have no access to occupy that space.
And I think they felt like, and I think rightfully so, that they had to enter that world with a sledgehammer and really just take on the patriarchy, and just go straight at the sexism that was involved in, let's just say it, involved in punk music, often involved in rap, even to this day,
So you had the hedonistic rock era of the 80s with a kind of strong whiff of misogyny in there. And then maybe even in the rap music to an extent, the commercialized stuff. So I think that new era of the 90s was kind of about rooting out stuff that was being kind of accepted without discussing it. It remained in the underground for the most part, but it had kind of a big cultural effect too.
Sure, like bands like L7 and El Tigre, and they're.
Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth represented that. Le Tigre came out of Bikini Kill a few years later.
Well, as long as we're talking about that, I'm just going to jump in with the one I had grouped with this song, which was the band Hole, and the song Violet. Courtney Love, we all know about her, but you talk about expressing anger in the song and really just putting it across. The song had themes of sexual exploitation, violence, self-abasement, and resentment. And it's said that it was inspired by a relationship that she had with Billy Corgan, but also, with her own husband, Kurt Cobain. But very aggressive. Really, the height of their art. Really, I thought it was one of their best efforts they ever made. Really.
And for a lot of teenagers to young adults in the mid to late 90s, that was a band that was kind of a, what would you say? A lot of people were drawn to them for that reason, that level of emotional catharsis. And then they actually took it more into the mainstream than a group like Bikini Kill was able to do. So then it became a bigger cultural thing. Not that Hole was the sole representative of that, but pretty big on that level. That would be the same kind of thing. You're listening to this music maybe because it's kind of part of your scene, what you're drawn to, but it's really, a lot of people were tapping into.
I don't want to take anything away from them because I thought they were a great band, but maybe a little reflected glory from from Nirvana and Kurt Cobain, and maybe some sympathy, when he passed away, and sort of carrying the mantle forward of that band. I don't know. It felt like they filled in a little bit of the void left by Nirvana, but
possibly. I think a lot of bands kind of came in to fill that void, or maybe looking at it conversely, there was a big space opened up for a lot to come through. But I hadn't thought about it for my list, but I think Hole was a good example of.
All right, well, our first segment is flown right by, as they
always
tend to
does.
do. And so we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a moment with a little bit more low-pass filter. Welcome back to Low Pass Filter. Bandon and Wayne there. Mateo Noche here, and we're talking about angry. Angry.
So we don't have to talk about it, but I also had Anarchy in the UK.
We both had Anarchy in the UK.
You know,
that
very snotty, angsty, FU kind of song to the man. And
I would have thought, I actually didn't see your list until this morning. I would have thought that you might have gone with God Save the Queen, which is also, I mean, pretty you know, angry with the royal family and in society. But I think Anarchy in the UK kind of embodies anger in songs. And Malcolm McLaren, of course, who's the sort of a creator and ringmaster of the Sex Pistols, said the song was a call to arm to kids who believed that rock and roll was taken away from them. It's a statement of self-rule and of ultimate independence.
There you go. Yeah.
I also like the green Jello version.
I don't know if I've ever heard that.
It's like it's the you know, they name check the Flintstones.
Wow.
And
I've never listened to that.
It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. Well, I'll run over a couple of mine. The first thing I had on my list was we can dismiss it as quickly as possible. Or maybe not. The song "I'm Not Angry" by Elvis Costello.
Oh, okay.
Now, he obviously was angry, but he was also kind of known as the angry young man of punk rock, even though we've talked about this before. I never looked at him as a punk rock artist. I thought he was
kind of on the edge of it. There was a punk edge, I think.
Kind of, but he was pretty sophisticated for punk, really. Yeah. I mean, he was writing complex melodies and throwing lots of, you know, highfalutin words in there, you know.
I think he was one of those artists that just, didn't have a proper place to be. They were just...
He looked pissed off, though, so that counts for something.
He was a square peg in a round hole, maybe. Yeah.
The other one I came up with is kind of the psychodrama between former Beatles, which is the song "How Do You Sleep" by John Lennon, which was written in the aftermath of Paul McCartney winning a suit dissolving the Beatles' partnership. Also, Lennon made a lot of nasty remarks about the Beatles and the members of the Beatles in an interview in the Rolling Stones in 1970. And so Paul and Linda sort of hit back with a full-page advertisement, which of mockery of John and Yoko. They were just in clown outfits and standing in a bag, which was kind of a takeoff of one of their album covers, one of the John and Yoko's album covers. Also in McCartney's Ram album, he wrote a thing called "Too Many People," which was later he admitted was a dig at John Lennon.
They really were going at each other.
They kind of were. Yeah. They kind of were for a while.
It was like they were both scorned ex-lovers or something. They were heartbroken over it.
Yeah, it was a rough divorce. I guess. It was a nasty breakup.
Paul, of course, would probably have a more magnanimous reflection upon it, maybe. Maybe. I'm sure now, you know, the hailography of John Lennon, you know, St. John, you know, he wrote "Imagine," and then, you know, he's in the pantheon of saints now, but you know, he wasn't the nicest of guys. Honestly, he was, you know, kind of contrary and very acidic, and didn't treat his families very well. He didn't treat his wives very well, and he was kind of spoiling for a fight, I guess, you know, and he got it. So. And speaking of fights and fighters, I threw in Bob Dylan because Bob Dylan, you know, had a tendency to be angry in songs. Yeah. And the first one I came up with was the song called "Hurricane," which was a song about Reuben Hurricane Carter, a professional fighter who was implicated in a triple murder. And this song is sort of railing against the racism, which was real, of you know, against people of color, and basically
said that he was railroaded and set up and framed and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Great song too. Just the song is also awesome, but there's really some anger in there. And just for the record, Carter was retried. He got a retrial. He was found guilty again.
Wow.
And Dylan didn't show up for that trial. He didn't really, he kind of think he sort of figured out that, well, there might have been something to this murder stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't,
The optics weren't as good.
they weren't as good anymore. But it made for a good song.
Yeah.
And then the other song that I have by Dylan was Masters of War, which came in the early 1960s. It was about nuclear proliferation, but it just drips with venom and anger, and it's still, I think, still a meaningful song. He doesn't write songs like that anymore, but it's still, I think it holds up all these years later.
Yeah. Yeah, and he also was, in his early career, was kind of following Woody Guthrie in inspiration and writing folk songs. And
it is actually based on an American traditional song called Notamum Town. So he lifted the melody from that. Which was a totally legit thing. That's what folk singers did.
Yeah.
And came up with a pretty great song.
Yeah, so there's all these different ways to express anger in music. It's not just pure abject anger, but I keep using the word frustration, but something that's bothering you and causing you to have angry feelings. But then there's also the kind of angry music that gets people off in a way. And that was kind of something in my mind as well, how some people are gravitated towards angry sounding music because they need that release. And I noticed that it became kind of popular in the 90s, maybe early 2000s, for people's workout playlists. Nothing but aggressive, angry music.
Wow.
That gets them in the spirit of working out or exercising hard. So I had examples like Angel of Death by Slayer, which got popular beyond just kind of serious hardcore metalhead. The song Break Stuff by Limp Bizkit. It's just one of those days. And it's just talking about, one of those days that stuff happens that makes you want to go out and cause destruction, which I've never agreed with.
Right.
I've never been that sort. They had kind of a debacle during performing that at Woodstock '99,
I remember
believe.
that, yeah.
Which was pretty gross, that whole situation. But since that era, I know people that talk about their workout playlists, and it's always really intense, kind of new metal, super hard techno, angry sounding music.
Industrial.
Yeah, industrial music. So I had Ministry on the list as well.
Speaking of industrial.
They got to a stage in their career where their music became very angry sounding. And there's some other metal stuff on my list, but that was just an aspect of music that expresses this level of anger that, like, we had an episode some time back about functionality in music.
Right.
And so I found that angry music oftentimes has a functionality for people.
Oh yeah, totally.
So I thought you might have some other enlightenment upon that aspect. I don't know.
I don't know how enlightening it's going to be, but I'm
illumination.
sure
Let's say illumination.
I have something to say about it. Yeah. No, totally, and you're right. I mean, angry music does have a function, and it, we talked about catharsis and release and putting your feelings somewhere, and releasing that anger in a constructive way, I guess would be the way to say it, or just a non-destructive way, I guess. Would probably be more to the point. So I got a couple of the Bad Boyfriend songs, and I know that you also have the same one, Alanis Morissette.
Yeah.
You Ought to Know. So a lot of people think that Taylor Swift invented the Bad Boyfriend song, but we're here to tell you that 30 years ago, this lady named Alanis Morissette wrote the song called "You Ought to Know." And she's never really identified who the boyfriend was, the ex-boyfriend was. There's lots of speculation online if you're interested.
Yeah, I kind of
go ahead and Google it. But anyway, she pretty much takes the person apart and leaves them in little tiny pieces, Yeah. So great.
The song was huge at the time, and it was a popular song. It was on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
That came to my mind as an angry song.
And speaking of Bad Boyfriend songs, Carly Simon, "You're So Vain," also on the radio. I think it might have been a #1 song.
Do you think that song was born out of anger? Do you think she was pissed off?
It feels like it.
It has a little bit of a sense of revenge about it.
Yeah. It's often said, again, speculating on who it might be. Warren Beatty is the name that comes up a lot, and I think he actually claimed it for himself. He doesn't mind being the "You're So Vain" because I guess maybe he is so vain. But Simon has said that it's kind of an amalgam of three men. There are a lot of vain men out there, apparently, or there was back in the 1970s. But it's basically a critical profile of a self-absorbed lover. You probably think this song is about you.
Yeah, that's a pretty clever line when you think about it that way.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
It really is.
Because I'm not going to say who it is, but there was probably more than one of you
leave them to wonder.
Led us to this place. Yeah, so it's a good tune.
Well done, Carly.
It's a song for the ages.
Yeah. What else do you have?
I Kick Out the Jams by the MC5.
Yeah, I wondered about that when you saw that on there.
It just has an energy of being kind of pissed off. Kick out the jams, MFers is the notorious line. I don't know if it's an angry song, but
I always looked at that as sort of a joyous song. Really, it was sort of like it's a celebratory. We're playing rock and roll, and we're playing out loud, and I guess there is that sort of whether you like it or not sort of thing in there.
And they were involved in protesting social injustice issues of the time.
Vietnam War,
and racism, and they were with John Sinclair and the White Panther Party, which I don't know how legitimate they were, but I believe they were trying to show support for Black Americans in the civil rights era, and they were kind of allies, and so I think MC5 was anti-establishment and had some shit to be pissed off about.
And there's a great Blue Oyster Cult cover of it, so I got to slip in the Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah, man. I don't know if there's too much more relevant on here, but went back to the metal with Refuse Resist by Sepultura, who was a Brazilian thrash metal band, and they have a lot of songs talking about world political issues and things like that, and growing up in a country that a lot of it was pretty third world. And
well, I've got I don't know if it's unexpected, maybe not for me, it's not that unexpected, but anyway, I put on the list Vicki Lawrence, "The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia."
Wow.
Which was kind of a southern psychodrama about the singer's brother is hung for a murder that he didn't commit, but that he wanted to commit.
Wow. Was that her song?
It was written by her husband at the
okay.
time. Bobby Russell, I think was the guy's name. But yeah, she had it. That was actually a #1 hit.
Wow. Wow.
Really, it's like one of those story songs, not based on a true story as far as I know, but it kind of cuts into like corruption, small town politics.
Interesting. Yeah.
Got a little bit of something for everyone in there,
And it was a #1 pop hit.
Yeah, it was a #1 pop hit.
Well, it was making me think of a lot of country music.
Yeah.
A lot of anger in their stories.
Sure, Hank Williams.
You might have a.
I don't know if there's as much overt anger as more like, "You done me wrong."
Yeah, you done me wrong kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Loretta Lynn was always singing about stuff like that,
Absolutely.
Don't be coming home stinking drunk. Don't be out.
Well,
cheating.
Tammy Wynette, was the queen of that.
Yeah.
There's a doc out on her.
Oh man.
That's supposed to be really great.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah. And about her career, about her relationship with George Jones, which was a tumultuous relationship.
Yeah, he was a son of a bee.
He was not that nice of a guy, but man, one of the best singers ever born. In my humble opinion,
yeah.
He could do something with a song
For sure. Yeah.
But I was trying to think of the song, the Tammy Wynette song that's particular. Whether it's, I don't know, instead of "Stand by Your Man," qualifies as an angry song particularly. I think a lot of people misunderstood the point of that song. But yeah, lots of angry country music. So I had David Bowie, "Look Back in Anger," which has nothing to do with the John Osborne play whatsoever. But he called it a tatty song about the angel of death. So he's kind of mad about the fact that people got to die and stuff like that. Looking back over stuff like that.
Yeah, and if you were Bowie writing a song from an angry place or expressing some angry feelings, he would shroud it in something that wasn't overtly, aggressively angry. Well,
it's pretty aggressively angry. The
Yeah.
song in tone and tenor.
I'm trying to think of that one. It's not coming to the top of my brain.
Well, before we go on, it's become that time again where we take a break. We go away for a minute.
Man, we got one more segment.
And we've got one more segment.
All right.
So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with Low Pass Filter in just a moment. Hi, welcome back to Low Pass Filter. Mateo Noche here, Bandon Wayne, right over there. We're back here.
Somehow we made it back.
We did make it back. It was kind of it was rough and it was touch and go for a second.
Yeah, we were on an epic sojourn.
That's right.
somewhere.
We got angry, we got mad. We started breaking things up. We decided, well, we're just not going to do that. Before we talk more, I should hasten to mention that you can find our Spotify playlists that are listed in the doodly-doo down here below and so you can listen to some of these songs as we talk about them. The other thing is that I haven't been around to check the mailbox lately. I should do that. But you can get in contact with us. You can yell at us. You can give us suggestions.
Yeah.
You could just say hi.
I would love to do a listener-suggested episode.
We do.
Topic-wise,
We need a listener-suggested episode.
Yeah.
And the way you would do that is you would send your email to lowpassfilter2020@gmail.com. And we're actively and avidly looking for listener suggestions for this show.
Yeah.
So please hit us up.
Even if you want to tell us that we're full of, we don't know what we're talking about over here.
We won't get that mad about that. We won't write a song about it.
No, we will not. But yeah, man, I came up with this topic. I don't know if we're running out of anger.
We're just not that angry.
We're just not that angry. I'll just bring up one more track that I had in my playlist, which was "She Watched Channel Zero" by Public Enemy.
Right, I'm not familiar with that one.
It's on their second album, which is sometimes considered their greatest. The one called "It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back."
Hold us back, yeah.
And that song actually features a sample of a Slayer riff in the song. It's based off of a Slayer guitar riff. Now, Public Enemy has a lot of anger, a lot of angst, a lot of frustration.
No kidding.
In their music, though, it's hard to pick the best example. But I like that song because it's got that metal edge to it, but it's also this kind of anger at the sort of negative self-image that people take on by identifying with archetypes and stereotypes on TV. So the refrain in that song is or the message in it is, you keep watching that garbage on TV, and one of the things that Flavor Flav, as the hype man, says in the song is, go outside, read a book, learn about yourself, learn about your culture, not just what you see on television. And so I always thought that was a different sort of topic for, things to be concerned about in that era.
Yeah, and of course now we would probably be talking TikTok or YouTube or something like that.
Precursor
kind
to
of
that
charming
sort of
to
thing.
think of television as something that's influencing people negatively, but I guess unless we're talking about Fox News, it kind of doesn't anymore. And then I also saw that you had Slayer on the list with the song Angel of Death.
I mentioned that just slightly earlier, but Slayer.
Also pretty angry outfit there.
Yeah, they sounded very angry. Their topics ranged across a broad spectrum of things, but I think Slayer fans really get off on that energy, and I don't know about today, but there was a time where a Slayer concert would probably have the most violent mosh pit of any live metal concert.
Right.
And that was where sometimes maybe that line might get crossed. Like, I'm not trying to throw all Slayer fans under the bus, but a certain type of frustrated male who might love heavy metal would probably most certainly be a Slayer fan.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it would go outside of the venue or just listening to the music personally. I'm not trying to claim that Slayer caused people to be violent, but
people have to take responsibility for their own thing.
But the scary metalhead Hesher was very, very much associated with Slayer fandom, I think. But anyway, for me, it would be more of just a vicarious sense of relating to some of those feelings by enjoying that kind of aggressive music.
And then did we talk about the Metallica choice? I don't think we did.
Yeah, threw them on there too. That was my 12, 13-year-old mildly angsty teenage self.
Sure.
Fell in love with that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think they had an angry bent to them too.
Yeah.
I don't think it was quite as arch, maybe, as Slayer, but.
But they were one of the earlier ones doing it too. And,
Yeah.
And and that song that I put on there, "Fight Fire with Fire," it's a very cold, kind of more Germanic kind of beat to it, and just angry sounding.
Got it. Well, speaking of angry sounds, the last one on my list is 9 Inch Nails' "March of the Pigs."
Mm-hmm.
And Trent Reznor, often referred to his audience as pigs, but in this case, he was talking about the media. Everybody's favorite punching bag.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's something to what he was talking about. He wrote the song about how nobody cared about the band and him until he reached a certain level of success, and then they set about trying to tear him down, and so that was kind of his FU, if you will, to the media, which I guess nowadays it's like it's kind of like whatevs, everybody's got something for the media.
Yeah.
Whoever they are,
The media is the media.
It's they and them. We know who they are. It's them. A lot of 9 Inch Nails is pretty angry and very that industrial thing that we've talked about on other shows.
Yeah. Their first breakthrough song, the lead song "Head Like a Hole" off their first album was, and then there's a song on that record called "Terrible Lie," a pretty angry sounding song too.
Yeah.
Trent Reznor is interesting because he garnered a lot of commercial success, has sold a lot of records, and especially in the mid-90s, kind of hit a max point in his commercial success, but he somehow managed to remain an outsider, kind of, and not really have much to do with that kind of status.
Yeah.
He's well off, and he probably appreciates that, but he doesn't really seem like a socialite.
Yeah. Well, of course, he famously, recorded, I think, this song and some other songs in the house that Sharon Tate was murdered in Coldwater Canyon, which I think has since been torn down. But anyway, I don't know, he's channeling something there. I'm not sure what it was, but nothing good.
Man. Yeah, and he symbolized a certain disenfranchisement of that mid-'90s era.
Yeah.
For a lot of kids.
It sort of there's that anger and a sort of disconnectedness that he's trying to put out, I think.
Yeah, which I would never pin on him for some harsh things that happened. There are some tragic things that happened, and people tried to say, "Oh, these kind of musicians, Marilyn Manson, 9 Inch Nails, stuff like that." I don't think they were in any way responsible for that, but it did connect with a lot of kids who felt really othered and outside of being accepted in society.
Well, there's that whole thing with cause and causation. Did it cause it, or was it just there? When the people in question were having their issues. So, just in summing up. We don't
want to end on that note. What else you got?
we don't want to end on that note. Let's find another note to end on. Just summing up, I guess angry music can be good for you, right? It can kind of release.
That's what
some
I was
tension.
Hoping would be the discovery in this.
Yeah,
that can be good for you.
Hopefully, it's not making you more angry.
No,
we don't. I don't think we'd wish that on anybody.
No, I think for the most part, it's a way to help process angry feelings come to a better place. Sometimes we need that in our life.
Yeah. Totally. Well, I think that's probably where we're going to leave it. You got the last word in there. Well, we want to thank you all for watching Low Pass Filter. Remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. That's what you're supposed to say in YouTube videos.
Smash the like button.
Smash, crash the like button and ring that notification bell so you'll get all of the great content that we have been irregularly producing. But we're working on getting back towards
we'll get
our
back
regular
to,
schedule.
Yes, indeed.
And thanks for watching Low Pass Filter. Bandon, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, man.
As always,
thanks for having me back.
It's been a fun time. And we'll see you again on the next Low Pass Filter. Thanks for watching Low Pass Filter. Contact the hosts at lowpassfilter2020@gmail.com. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified about future shows.